Welcome to Leadership Trails. This is episode number 5. When the engine goes quiet, real leaders appear. This is a real story that happened with me during my training on airplanes until I became a pilot. So the easiest part of flying is not flying. The easiest part is when the engine is running smoothly, the weather is clear, the radio is calm, and the airplane is doing exactly what you expected it to do. The real test begins when the sound changes. This is Dr. Mark Shami, and welcome to Leadership Trails. I'm a managing director and professor at the University of California. Over the last 25 years, I have worked on and led many successful mega projects and have trained thousands of engineers and managers and executives all over the world. So here, I'm talking about this journey. I have seen one leadership lesson repeat itself again and again. People are rarely tested by the routine. They are tested by disruption. People are not truly tested when drawings are complete, schedule is realistic, budget is available. They are tested when the design changes, when the supplier is late, when the client is upset, when the team is tired, and when every decision suddenly carries consequences. That's why this story is not only about flying, it's about leadership. So the flight over Napa Valley. Years ago, I was flying a Cessna 172 with my certified instructor. Beautiful Napa Valley underneath. It was one of those beautiful Northern California days where everything looked peaceful from above. The vineyards looked perfectly arranged, the hills were calm, the sky was open, and the airplane felt steady at about 5,000 feet above ground. I was comfortable, maybe too comfortable, enjoying the views. Then, without much warning, my instructor reached over and pulled the throttle back to idle. The engine sound dropped. The airplane became quiet. She looked at me, the instructor, and said, "Engine failure, what are you going to do?" At that moment, the beautiful Napa Valley view disappeared from my mind. I was no longer thinking about vineyards, hills, and how elegant the airplane looked in the sky. I was thinking, why did she do that to me now? Few seconds earlier, I was a student pilot, enjoying the view. Now, I had to become a pilot who could think, decide, and act. Think, decide, and act. I had to control the airplane, establish best glide speed, pick a landing area, check fuel, mixture, carb heat, ignition, communicate, follow the emergency procedure, all that stuff. The checklist was no longer a document, it was a lifeline. That day, I learned something that has stayed with me far beyond aviation. We do not truly learn the skill when everything is normal. We learn when the situation becomes uncomfortable, uncertain, unforgiving. Flying in smooth air is important, but it does not reveal whether you can handle the airplane. Leadership in calm condition is important, but it does not reveal whether you can handle responsibility. The real test comes when the engine goes quiet, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about here. So let me tell you about Camille. Camille is my friend. He was a project director when construction became in crisis in his project. I saw the same lesson later in this industry. That young project engineer named Camille worked on a major hospital expansion project. Camille was smart, disciplined, technically strong. She knew how to prepare submittals, track RFIs, follow up on drawings, attend coordination meetings, produce clean reports. On normal days, Camille looked excellent. She was the kind of engineer who came to meetings prepared, had drawings organized, and could find the latest revision faster than most people could find their safety glasses. But the project was not going to test her on a normal day. The project was already under pressure. The owner had promised partial occupancy on a fixed date. The design was still evolving. Long lead mechanical equipment was delayed. The electrical contractor was pushing for access. The structural team was waiting for revised openings. The schedule showed activities neatly connected in sequence, but the actual project behaved nothing like the schedule. Design, procurement, approvals, manpower, access, productivity, and rework were all interacting at the same time, in motion. Then came the moment when the engine went quiet. During preparation for a major concrete pour, the team discovered a serious coordination issue. Several embedded sleeves and openings for mechanical and electrical services were either missing, mislocated, or based on outdated drawings. The concrete pour had been planned for weeks. Crews were scheduled, the pump was arranged, concrete trucks were booked. The owner's representative expected progress, and the project manager expected the pour to happen on that day. And of course, because construction projects have a sense of humor, everything happened at the same time. The concrete supplier called to confirm the trucks. The superintendent called to ask if the pour was still on. The electrical subcontractor claimed with full confidence that everything was coordinated while standing next to an opening that was clearly in the wrong location. Then someone spilled coffee on the only set of marked drawings. And just when Camille thought the situation could not become more ridiculous, the owner's rep walked in and said, "Can't we just pour now and fix it later?" That is the construction version of saying, "Can't we just land the plane after we figure out where the runway is?" That's really funny. Stopping the pour would create delay, cost, and embarrassment. Proceeding with the pour would bury the problem permanently inside the structure. Everyone looked at Camille. At first, she did what many young engineers do under pressure. She tried to solve everything at once. She opened drawings, called subcontractors, checked emails, walked to the deck, answered the superintendent's response to the planner, and tried to calm the owner's engineer. Her phone kept ringing. One message said, "Urgent." The next message said, "Very urgent." The next one said, "Super urgent." At that point, she realized the only thing not urgent was her blood pressure, because that had already resigned from the project. The more she moved, the less control she had. That is exactly what happened to a student pilot in an emergency. The danger is not only the engine failure. The danger is panic, fixation, and loss of priorities. So let me tell you how the situation was stabilized. In aviation, the first rule is simple: fly the plane. In construction, the equivalent is stabilize the project. Camille stepped back and remembered a lesson one of her mentors had once shared with her. When the situation becomes chaotic, do not start by chasing noise. Start by protecting outcomes. So she called for a 20-minute stand-down meeting with the superintendent, MEP coordinator, structural engineer, concrete subcontractor, and quality manager. She did not begin with blame. She began with control. She said, "First, we are not pouring concrete until we know what we are looking into the structure. Second, we will separate the issue into 3 categories: what is confirmed correct, what is confirmed wrong, and what is unknown. Third, we will make one decision at a time." That was her best glide speed. She was no longer trying to save the entire project in one emotional reaction. She was putting the project into a controlled descent. The team walked the deck zone by zone. They marked every sleeve opening. They compared the latest coordinated shop drawings against the field installation. They identified which issue was critical, which could be corrected before the pour, and which could be handled later without structural or operational damage. Then Camille did what many people avoid under pressure. She communicated early. She informed the project manager that the pour would not proceed as originally planned. She explained the technical risk clearly. She did not hide behind vague language. She said, "We can lose one day now, or can lose several weeks later through coring, rework, claims, disruption to the trades." That sentence changed the conversation. The project manager was not happy, but he understood. The superintendent was frustrated, but he respected the logic. The owner's rep was concerned, but appreciated the transparency. Even the electrical subcontractor who had earlier said everything was coordinated quietly moved away from the wrong opening and became very interested in his phone. By the end of the day, the team had a recovery plan. Part of the core was resequenced, critical embedded items were corrected. The MEP team assigned a dedicated coordinator to verify all remaining penetrations. The structural engineer reviewed the most sensitive areas. The planner updated the short-term schedule. And the quality manager created a pre-pour checklist that could become mandatory for all future pour. The project lost time that day, but it avoided much larger failure. A few weeks later, the same issue appeared in another area. This time, the team did not panic. They already had the checklist. They already knew the response. What was once a crisis had become a capability. So let me tell you about the lesson. What is the leadership lesson? So the leadership lesson, that is what real learning looks like. It is not the absence of difficulty. It is the conversion of difficulty into discipline. In flight training, the instructor does not simulate an engine failure because she wants to scare the student. She does it because one day, if the real emergency comes, the pilot cannot be meeting that situation for the first time. They will really panic. The same is true in leadership. A project engineer who has only experienced smooth meetings, clean drawings, cooperative subcontractors, and realistic schedules may look competent. But competence is not fully proven until something breaks. The late material delivery, the failed inspection, the angry client, the missing drawings, the unsafe conditions, the subcontractor who walks off the job, the productivity collapse, nobody wants to admit, the change order that threatens the relationship, the schedule that no longer reflects reality. There are engine out moments of construction. And in those moments, leadership is not about sounding confident. It's about restoring control, aviate, navigate, communicate. These are the three magic rules of aviation. For the project leader, that becomes stabilize the situation, choose the safest path forward, and then communicate clearly and early. This is why I often connect this lesson to a tool manifesto. The book shows that in complex fields such as aviation, medicine, construction, and others, expertise alone is not enough. Under pressure, even highly capable people need disciplined systems. They need checklists, clear procedures to prevent avoidable failure. It also connects closely with the Harvard Business Review article that I read recently. It was called The Crucible of Leadership by Warren Bennis and Robert Thomas. The article explains that leaders are often shaped not by easy success, but by intense, difficult experiences and test their judgment, character, and resilience. That is exactly what happens to Camille, my friend, project engineer in the job. Her real growth did not happen because she knew the procedures on a normal day. Her growth happens because the project forced her to apply judgment when the pressure was real. That is also the lesson I learned over Napa Valley on that small plane. When the engine is running, everyone feels like a pilot. When the engine goes quiet, training appears. When the project is moving smoothly, everyone feels like a leader. When the project begins to fail, leadership appears. We should not wait for real emergencies to develop real leaders. We should train engineers, managers, and project teams through difficult scenarios before the real crisis appears, and it will appear someday. We should expose them to simulations, case studies, schedule failures, design conflicts, procurement shocks, safety incidents, and communication breakdowns. Because leadership is not built by memorizing the normal procedures. Leadership is built by practicing the emergency procedures. And sometimes the most important sound in your development is not the roar of the engine. It's the silence that forces you to find out who you really are. When the engine goes quiet, you do not rise to the level of your title, you fall back on the depth of your training. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please stay tuned on the next story on leadership trails, as I will talk about the diamond that is already on the payroll. Please share your comments and let me know if you had a similar encounter like what you heard in the story. Until then, have a great day. I'm Dr. Mark Shami, and this is Leadership Trail. Goodbye.